Hi, everybody. My name is Alex McGarry. I'm a career ambassador for the CCD. Today, I'm interviewing Jeannette Correa. First, tell us a little about yourself, like your major, college, stuff like that.
Yeah, so I am a triple terrier. So I did my bachelor's, my master's, and my PhD all at BU. Um, so I majored as an undergrad in psychology. I got my master's from BU en route to my PhD in clinical psychology. So I technically graduated 2012 with bachelor's, 2015 with my master's, and then 2020 with the PhD.
Nice. So, could you tell us a little bit about like your first job after getting your PhD?
Yeah. So, first job after PhD, I got kind of through networking after my postdoc, which I did through the Veterans Affairs system. So the job was at a kind of like a private group practice. Started off as a staff clinician, and then in a couple months became the director of clinical training. So I see patients. I also train clinicians who are in PhD programs on what I do.
Wow. Okay. So, how was that transition from PhD to that career in psychology?
Yeah, at that point, I feel like it went pretty seamlessly. You get the PhD is a pretty long road. So I was pretty well prepared with the program, the clinical psych program here at BU. It was kind of just that last step to autonomy, I guess. But it was very nice not to have to do anything outside of work hours. I'd say that was a very good transition from not being a student anymore to finally just the full-time professional job.
So, I take it in graduate school, you did have a career during that time, like a part-time job or something?
Yeah, so the clinical training itself ends up kind of being the work that you do. Um, so the way graduate school works for clinical psychology, at least at BU, slight differences outside, but you typically have, you've got a couple of years of classes. Starting usually your second year, you start to see patients and do like externships and practicum placements. Um, and then you do a couple of those accruing hours. Then you do what's called like a clinical internship, which you match to. And then some people choose to do a postdoc for some more specialized training. Some people will kind of find someone to supervise their final hours before licensure. um, and then I think some people, if you're going to go the academic route, you don't even necessarily need licensure. But there's pros and cons to that.
Okay.
I went the more clinical practice and training route
Mm,
personally.
okay. So circling back, you said like you had like a pretty smooth transition. You like networked to get your first job at a private practice. How did you like begin networking and expanding your network? And what resources did you use to support this?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was in the middle of COVID pandemic kind of lockdown when I started making my transition. So me personally, I ended up now working with the other postdoc, so kind of my peer, um, at at the job that I had there or at the VA. Um, and we were just kind of at that point sharing back and forth what opportunities were. And I ended up landing at a job that my peer originally found.
Nice.
So that was very helpful. But the other things that I kind of did, right, you talk to the people who are supervising you. Right, like what opportunities do they have? Can they connect you with anything? And I kind of pursued all of those avenues. Just the one that worked out was the peer connection.
Nice. So do you think like the coursework that you completed at BU is like directly applicable to your current position? And if not, what would you recommend students do to prepare for their position in this industry?
Yeah. So I actually think it was the hands-on experience that prepared me for the job that I have now. Probably more so than classes. So it was all of the right like clinical practicum experiences, the extra research jobs that I kind of did here and there, um, and just mostly just being present and paying attention to what others were doing around me and following my curiosity. I think was a big part too. I'd be like, oh, I'm interested in this. All right, how can I get some practical experience in it? Is kind of what I did. What set me to the path to the PhD, actually. So I volunteered as an undergrad at the Center for Anxiety Related Disorders, which is like the BU clinical program.
Hmm.
So I volunteered in a lab there. I think I started probably junior year, maybe end of junior year, doing that. I ended up actually working for BU in that lab for 2 years before getting into the PhD program. And it was like kind of those steps of just being present, being there, that ended up getting me accepted into the graduate school program as well. So it's really the experience being present. And I always say, like, if you're interested in something, tell people around you about your interest, right? There's people out there who will make connections, right? For you, but they can't connect you if they don't know you're interested, is kind of how I've lived
Hmm.
all the steps of, I guess, my career so far.
So looking at like how you said like it was a lot of like hands-on experience that helped you fit into your current position now, what would you say like the most helpful resources were that were on campus for you that like other students might not be aware of and should take advantage of?
Yeah, so I mean, for one, at least specific to psychology, right? Like, reach out to those professors who run labs, right? Even if it's maybe you are taking a class with them and have a curiosity about what they're doing. You can take the approach of shoot an email and see if there are any opportunities to volunteer. I found out about the volunteer work actually through a work study job on campus, just by again talking with peers. Peers has been a big thing for me, right? Talking with people I was working with who also happened to work and volunteer at the clinic, and got connected through there. So I think that, even if something doesn't seem like it's initially relevant, it could be. Um, so it's hard to say something specific. The way I found out about the volunteer job was I was working at BU FitRec, actually, in the aquatics program, and another
Oh, really?
swim instructor and lifeguard was like, "Hey, you're a psychology major. Me too. Like, you should really look at at BU CARD, the Center for Anxiety." And I was like, "Okay," and I did. So it's just follow through when people mention things. Use
Hmm.
the people around you to figure out what's present, what's not, what might be open. Um, and right, like, yeah, that's what I did.
Nice. So then like in applying for like both jobs and then for these volunteer opportunities, how do you think like you differentiated yourself from like maybe other job applicants who are also going for the same positions as you?
Um, well, I got the chance to prove myself reliable by already being there.
Hmm.
I stayed consistent. I, set my hours and was always there. I asked to understand things if I didn't know what was going on, and I just kind of slowly built more responsibility um, as I was kind of going through each one of these steps. And I think you get more responsibility, the more reliable you show yourself to be. So that was a big part. I'd also say, like, it took a lot of time investment to be able to do that. Most of these, right, like opportunities are unpaid, hence kind of volunteered. So I kind of just prioritized the things that seemed to connect to where I wanted to go. Um, yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. So given that like level of effort you had to put in and stuff like that during school, how did you balance like the variables such as like social life with academics, especially as like you had all these like volunteer opportunities you had to do?
Yeah, not perfectly, I'll say, is probably the real answer to that. But right, like, um, I think it just had to do with my priorities at the time. I was very focused on the next steps of where I wanted to go. I recognized that B is a huge place. There was a lot of research going on. There was a lot of different departments, and I just kind of prioritized and made some tough decisions, honestly. I did work quite a bit in addition to classes. Let's see. So I worked in bioaquatics. I worked for University Res Life as a resident assistant as well. So that was a great place to connect with people. I worked at Marsh Chapel as well for a number of years, including kind of office assistant. I did some wedding coordinating there, which was a great opportunity. Um, and I think I got lucky enough with each kind of job, whether it be volunteer or one that, sustained me. I just worked with great people. And so I connected kind of while working. And that's kind of the best balance that I could have gotten. But I mean, I won't lie, they were very packed days in order to be able to kind of get these experiences to then build off of.
Nice. So then building off of that, like how did you structure like your work life with academics in that sense?
Yeah, I think, I mean, mostly what I did was I volunteered, I worked, went to classes, and then whatever time was left over, which, usually wasn't that much, I would spend kind of, with others, but wasn't always perfect.
Hmm.
And I did kind of rely on just, I stuck with the places that had good people around me and then kind of balanced it through that, I guess. But the academic part, I don't know. I showed up to class, I listened really well, and I made the best use of kind of the study times that were there. Luckily, a lot of the jobs I did have downtime, so I was able to kind
Oh,
of combine those things together as
nice.
well. Um, but yeah.
Okay, cool. So then, as part of the BU's graduate program at like College of Arts and Sciences, do you believe it like contributed to landing your current job? And like, why did you choose like to go into graduate school?
Yeah. So I mean, I think it was a huge contributing factor. Like BU's clinical psychology program is one of the best. Um, and the reasons why I wanted to be there were, it matched my interests at the time, right? Like when you get to the level of graduate school, at least in psychology, you're looking for like a research and interest match with your mentor. So I kind of found that. I think being there, I should say that I volunteered, was the research tech and graduate student in the same lab. So it was all kind of with the same mentor. So it's a Dr. Timothy Brown. He has actually recently retired, so he's not there anymore.
Oh,
But I wanted to go to a place that had a great reputation in terms of its training. So that was kind of top on my list. It was really nice to get to stay in Boston that long, I will also say. So I didn't, have to pack up and move across states at least for a while. I think, let's see, I moved to Boston 2008. I think I left 2019. So I was there for quite a long time, in a couple different capacities, of course. But um, I think what set me up was while I was present in graduate school, again, I followed my curiosity. I got experiences related to that. That shifted as I went through grad school. I thought I was going to be a researcher, ended up more of a clinical role, but you learn that through your experience. Um, and for better or for worse, I didn't say no to many opportunities while I was there. So for better in terms of learning, for worse in terms of having balance of days, but that balance I have a better grasp on now. But that was because of doing all the extra before.
hmm.
So,
So, looking at this career path, it's a pretty long path. You're a triple terrier. For undergraduates, this might seem a little overwhelming or daunting. Like they might not think they can make it that far. What would you say is like your best practices against like maybe burnout or like what you would like recommend them to do to like stay on this path, like encourage them to be on this path?
yeah. Yeah, it's a very relevant question, because I think the PhD route is something that it's a lot of school. It's a long time. You're in school through most of your 20s, right? So make sure you're doing something you're interested in, right? Your interest can be a huge protective factor against, I think, burnout. Um, and at least I can at least speak to psychology, right? Like as a field, there's a lot of diversity within it, right? So you have opportunities to do research, right? You can teach, you can do clinical work through like a lot of different populations. So if you keep it just different enough with what you're doing, I think that was very helpful against burnout. But I'd be lying if I said that I didn't experience it at points kind of during the process. But it's just make sure you're ready to commit if you want to go the pathway, right? Make sure you've got the supports to help you keep that commitment alive, right? Whether it be, I don't know, my significant other, right? Who is now my husband, was a huge part of helping me through all that. Sometimes you have to sacrifice time for opportunities. And as long as you kind of go in knowing that, I think you're setting yourself up hopefully pretty well. Um, it's tough as a grad student sometimes because it's a little bit more difficult to set boundaries because you, for one, you're excited usually about what's going on. That doesn't, so it's, if you're a curiosity based learner, maybe a little bit like me, it's very easy to book 12, 14-hour days, even when you're not required to. But you do it because it's fascinating. So my advice going through it and having had that style is there's plenty of time. You don't necessarily need to do everything in the same year. You can space it out a little bit. And, try to prioritize your interests, I guess, maybe is a big part of that. Allow it to change, right? Allow yourself to update that priority, but make sure you always have one, I think, is the biggest piece.
Okay, cool. So then looking into like the graduate program, I know you talked a lot about like how like outside jobs or jobs on campus helped you like find those connections. What would you say like for other students that may not find these like outside jobs? Like, what would you say for them to get started on in graduate school?
So like if they're interested in applying to grad school or already in it?
Already in it.
Yeah. Well, if you're already in it, you've probably got it. You've made enough connections to get there because that's a huge, huge piece, right? So, I still want to stick with like kind of try not to overdo it, right? Prioritize your interests. Go for
Hmm.
like, you can't serve the top 10. Maybe try to serve the top 3 and, prioritize connections that are there. And, having a couple of maybe outside interests that don't just purely involve just whatever graduate program you're in can also be quite helpful, at least if you have one that you get to spend some time with.
So what was your favorite part of like your whole Triple Terrier experience?
Mm. Oh, that probably changed from time to time. To be quite honest, I liked living on campus a lot. It was
Wow.
just, right in the middle of everything. I worked residence life and was actually an RA for undergrad and all of graduate school. So I literally was right in the heart of it. And I think, just being present for that time in my 20s was like, it was a great place to be during that time. Um, it was nice how close everything ended up being.
Hmm.
Um, and then kind of outside of that, probably it changed year by year on what felt like the best piece. So I don't know if I could totally break it down entirely. I kind of enjoyed all the pieces while I was present. There was moments of frustration, but they never took over or made me leave because I was there so long. So no, but all of the opportunities, all the things that I've done up to this point, like almost all of them are connected with BU in some way.
Nice.
Um, so yeah, it's hard to answer that one, I guess, ultimately.
So just for some like closing remarks, do you have like any pieces of advice you'd like to give or like any like talk about like your current job at all, like anything at all, like anything you'd like to leave out off students who are watching this?
Yeah, I think, if you're interested in something, say something, right? Say it and don't just say it once, right? Like keep a consistent message. If there's really something that you want to do or you want to experience, you might not be able to get it right away and it might take a little bit of time, but if you have a consistent narrative of what you want to do, right, who you want to be, right, what you want to do for your work, what you want to learn about, you really just got to tell people. I think that's started most things, right? Even just saying like, hey, I'm a psychology major
Hmm.
in front of someone I worked with at FitRec, right, got me to a volunteer opportunity that got me into grad school, that got me here.
Hmm.
So, right, if you're interested, say something, share it to people. You never know who's gonna, have something or be able to say like, oh, hey, I know a person, right? Or, oh, I know of this opportunity. So that would be my probably last piece of advice. I've kind of lived by that. So
Nice, nice. Well, thank you for your time. I've loved this interview. It's great to see like the Terriers outside in like the workplace right now from that transition from college. Students love to see it. So thank you again.
of course, happy to help. Thank you.